Hi, this is Ralph Oliva, Director at the ISBM, with a quick facts overview on the foundation concepts, the language of value, and this is a value in use calculation example from a real case, rapid form steel. So this is a real case that we worked on for a steel company that had developed a new rapid form steel for an automobile muffler application. And their steel was working with a particular customer, and all these numbers have been changed, of course, to reduce scrap in their process. And they had a fairly high scrap rate on the process, rejected parts. So rapid form reduced scrap from 25% to 5%, and also lowered labor cost because sheets could be fed faster into the stamping process from 80 cents a part to 50 cents a part. And the incumbent, what they were currently using, the next best alternative, if you will, was high carbon steel. So we were called in to help them think through what the value of rapid form in this application was for this specific customer. Now, when we arrived on the scene, the folks at the steel company had done some cost-based pricing. So it cost very little more to make rapid form. And remember, we would insist that cost and price really are not related, that price should be set based on value. So at the time, high carbon steel was selling, let's say, at 60 cents a pound, as again, all these numbers have been changed. They decided, well, it doesn't cost much more. Let's try 70 cents a pound. They'll probably buy after negotiation at 68 cents a pound. But since it doesn't cost much, we'll make a lot of margin. But something told them that there was an opportunity to do more. So using our principle, we said customer values the economic impact compared to the next best alternative that your offering, rapid form, has on this particular customer's business. And we identified, after talking quite a bit of time with them, there were two components identified of value. There was reducing the scrap rate from 25 to 5% and reducing the labor cost from 80 cents to 50 cents a part. But we always would probe, are there other value elements that we should consider? And we had determined, right, that as we did the calculation, that these were pretty much the two value elements. An important tool for helping you to compute value is the Economic Value Estimation, or E, Value Analysis template from the Strategic Pricing Group. You look at the competitive alternative, in this case up at the top, that would be high carbon steel. You look at the feature of your offering, the benefit it provides. What is the fundamental driver of value? What is the formula that you would use to calculate it? What are the inputs and sources you need for the numbers you need to compute the calculation, and what's the differential value? This framework enables you, moving from left to right, to begin thinking about the positive differential value of your offering. Now, sometimes there's a switching cost or something that's negative in this, and that has to be part of the equation as well, the negative differential value. Use the same left to right, featured benefit, value driver, value formula, inputs and sources, and differential value to make the calculation. Now, in practice, we find that this can be a very powerful tool. In this case, we moved in a relatively straightforward way from the left to the right. Rapid form was easier stamping, reduced scrap rate. There was a value driver was reduced waste. So at 2 pounds a part, times 60 cents a pound for the incumbent, high carbon steel, times the reduction in scrap rate. And this came from, and this is important, at this point we plugged in the numbers because we had customer factory floor reports. Often if you don't have information like that, working with the economic value analysis template, you can work with your customers to get the information you need to compute the value. So a simple calculation here said, well, for reduced scrap rate, we save 24 cents a part or 12 cents a pound. And we did the similar calculation right below that for the fewer sheets fed to the machine. So we had a 30-cent labor savings per part or 15 cents a pound for rapid form steel compared to the high carbon steel alternative. So building the value salami for the customer in this case, their next best alternative was high carbon steel at 60 cents a pound. And we were adding positive differentiation of positive value on top of that of 12 cents a pound through reduction in scrap and 15 cents a pound in decreased labor. So the total value we were delivering here was 87 cents a pound, just doing the simple addition here. And they had set their price, based on a guess, at 68 cents a pound. So it was clear from this that they probably could have set the price higher, maybe a dime a pound higher. and still given the customer quite a bit of increased value. And they undoubtedly left some money on the table by not understanding the value of their offering in this particular application. But then as this, by the way, true story unfolded, it got worse, because we kept asking questions on what else happens when rapid form works in this application. What else? What else? And always a good question to ask. And finally, one of the salespeople in the room said, well, you know, the dies at the customer's stamping site last a lot longer with rapid form. And we asked the question, well, how much longer? And it turns out that, you know, they really didn't know, but they knew it was longer. So we said, well, how often did the dies break down with high carbon steel? And they said, well, at least 3 times a year, the dies would get chopped up by the high carbon steel, and they'd have to shut down their process, repair the dies, bring the process back up. And it was very costly and painful for the customer. But with rapid form, it had been quite a few months, almost a year, and there was no die failure. So what they were discovering is that the value and use of rapid form as a die life extender was probably far more than it was as a scrap reducer and a faster feed kind of offering. And it dawned on them that because of the value of rapid form as a die life extender, they were probably selling the wrong value proposition to the wrong person at the customer for all the wrong reasons, and leaving the customer with a bunch of value and leaving a lot of that value unharvested for this particular supplier. So the lesson learned from that was always probe, and this is Alcoa's probing checklist, to see what's going on. How are you using my offering in your application? Is it reducing time? Is it reducing cost? Is it adding revenue? Where actually do you find out the things you need to compute true customer value? Probe and always ask why. And above all, don't assume you always know why a customer is buying your offering in a specific situation. And remember that when you're computing value, you're always computing it compared to the next best alternative. What is the customer using now? In this case, it was simple. They were using high carbon steel. But in different markets, it's, you know, your offering might have, you know, a very, very easy to imitate kind of value component. And you really need to be innovating constantly to differentiate. You might have a competitor that has decided to buy business by lowering price with a similar alternative, in which case the next best alternative might be right next to yours, particularly if your intellectual property, which can be the basis of a differentiation, has gotten stolen. So, and also really understanding the value of all components in the bundled offering you might be selling with products and services, etc. Very important, and requires using the economic value estimation tool for each component of the offering, often for different people inside the customer buying center. So the basic challenge and the way business markets work is you work with your customers to build value, new alternatives better than the next best alternative. But then it's up to us as sellers to compute and explain that value, moving the customer's perceived value closer to the true value. Pricing, slicing the value salami in giving your customer a good economic driving force to do business with you and reasonable margin to be your incentive to supply, and managing that process over the life cycle is at the very core of what business-to-business marketing is all about. So here we put together the entire taxonomy, the entire value salami one more time. Over on the left, for you as a supplier or a vendor, there are your costs. There's the challenge you have of not only creating customer value, but explaining it to them in a way that moves the customer perceived value closer to the true value. And that winds up being the key task of integrated strategic communications. Knowing how much of the salami is essentially lost in a negotiation because the customer perceived value is lower than the true customer value you're delivering, that can give you an idea of what you ought to invest in communications to close that gap. Price divides the value salami into a piece for the customer, their driving force to do business with us, and our margin, which is the reason we're in business. So we hope this taxonomy is helpful to you in better understanding the relationship between value, costs, and pricing, and moving from pricing which might be based on cost, which we would never suggest, to pricing based on value. This is Ralph Oliva.